Good morning, Carrie O'Hanlon.
Good morning, Damien.
Thanks very much for coming in to me again. Appreciate it. People may remember we had you on, it's nearly a month ago now, 3 or 4 weeks ago, in advance of a meeting that you were having, and it took place last Thursday, June the 11th, correct?
That's right, yeah.
At the Coast Guard Centre in Tramore, the Coast Guard Cultural Centre. Nothing to do with Coast Guard matters, but it was a public meeting that you helped organise in relation to childcare and the childcare deficit in Tramore. So how did the meeting go? How many turned up, and was there a good interest in it?
Well, thank you, Damien. Yes, the meeting was very well attended. We had over 41 people to attend, and a number of very accommodating babies with their mums. And we had a really strong turnout from our public representatives as well.
Special mention to them. Again, a number of TDs there. A number sent their apologies. I think Lauren was there from, as you say, John Cummins' office. So there was some good, strong representation there. David Cullinan as well. Yeah, which was great to see. And they stayed for the duration of the meeting and listened to all of the concerns and the frustrations that were presented. And they also were presented with the petition that I spoke to you about the last day as well. And we have over 415 signatures on that petition. So it was a really strong, loud voice of the parents and families at Tramore. And what's that petition calling for?
So that petition was to request the shortage of childcare provision and infrastructure in Tramore to be addressed urgently. And when our frustrations was presented and some facts as well with regard to the lack of infrastructure and provision in the town, we have commitment from from David Cullinan and John Cummins representative to get our 4 regional TDs together to present our case to the Minister of Education, the Minister for Children. So we understandably will be chasing that and doing what we can to support our TDs to put our best case forward. Childcare seems to be creeping up more and more in the news. So we know we're not the only town that are facing these challenges, but we have taken the first step in doing something very proactive. Yeah,
and we said it a few weeks ago when I spoke to you that Tramore was effectively an example of lots of things that are happening across the country, that areas are being developed quite quickly. There's a big demand for housing. Now, there are supposed to be childcare facilities put in along with housing, but there are in many places a big shortfall, a big deficit. And that's the situation in Tramore.
That's correct. And that really is the second point from the meeting, is a commitment to infrastructure. And I suppose we've officially, by having this meeting and bringing our concerns to our representatives, initiated the process to secure a state-led childcare provision within the town. And I suppose the site that comes to mind in the south that is brought up in conversation all the time is Clonlarrick. And we have had some positive engagement through the Water for Childcare Committee with regards what could be done with that site. But the deficit in Tramore is greater than just one site. So we would welcome, and this would be via the subcommittee that will be set up as a result of this meeting, to look at other potential sites that could be redeveloped. That came through feedback at the meeting, that there are a number of sites in Tramore that might be available for lease through a state arrangement to establish more childcare services because of the regulations and because of certainly the space within buildings for the number of spaces in it. I don't think one childcare facility is going to solve the problem of so many.
And just remind our listeners, what is Clonlarrick, what's there at the minute and what could or should be done with it?
So Clonlarrick is one of the housing estates in Tramore. It's a newer housing estate, and as part of the building regulations, a site purposely built for childcare is in that planning. And unfortunately that site has remained vacant. It has not been taken for lease or furnished for childcare in a number of years, and that just highlights a challenge with I suppose the disconnect that we brought to our representatives on Thursday, that the plans are there but the actual realisation of services is not happening.
And could that be done fairly quickly?
We would like to see real action on this in time for the next school year, which would be September 26.
And would it be possible to do that? That's only 3 months away. Yeah. Would it be possible? Is it physically possible?
I think the biggest drawback is that if you moved heaven and earth and got it fitted out, kitted out, and ready to go, that would be a mammoth community action. Is it realistic? Probably borderline no. But what really is not realistic is getting the staffing. And that is the third and final point that came across really strongly at our meeting from our, not only from our parents who can't get places, but also from the providers. And we had a really strong representation from the childcare providers in Tramore, which was great to see, because they want this addressed as well. That if we don't start advocating for our childcare professionals, we're not going to be able to staff units. And we need to start advocating for them to get professional recognition, for better pay, because staffing shortages are critical. And they're not going, if that's not addressed, it doesn't matter how many buildings we have, because there won't be the people there to mind our children.
You mentioned a few minutes ago a state-led creche facility or child-minding facility. And the government, Norma Foley, made a big play on this in the last while, saying that, the state is going to get involved in this. But their plans at the minute are fairly limited. Yeah. I think they're only saying around 8 around the country. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
Where are we on that? Have they announced where those 8 are going to be?
Not to my knowledge. And my understanding is that there are dozens of areas applying for this. So as it stands, Tramore, with the support of this subcommittee out at this public meeting, will be throwing another hat in the ring.
But Tramore hasn't yet applied?
Not that, no.
Right.
There hasn't been any
isn't this
cohesive group?
There hasn't been any. And you're just an ordinary mammy. Yeah. You're a resident in Tramore. You're a mother. And this is a bottom-up led campaign.
Yeah.
Isn't it terrible that our council, for example, or any of the councillors, or the council as a group, didn't put in an application and a request for one of these state-led creche facilities in the county?
I'm not sure how it
works.
I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure how the advocacy works, because there seems to be an awful lot of behind the scenes work in this area. And in any area, health education is the same, to see what services are needed. What is frustrating is the timeline, is that my eldest little girl is 3.5. There are whole estates in Tramore now built, people living in them, children playing in their gardens, that did not exist when she was born. That again, it goes back to the disconnect. If you know things are being built, and family homes, these are family homes, they're 3, 4, 5 bedroom houses. If that's not mapping to the services that will be required at speed, because everything seems to be delayed. There is no two ways about it. We know that we are looking for the public purse, but there is a major disconnect in what services are provided. One of the strongest things that came out of the meeting, and there was a number of things, and I'll touch on them as well, was that how much a private provider has a business case put together to set up a childcare facility. And they could be looking at rents between 2 and 6 grand a month to lease a property. Then they have to kit it out. And kitting out a childcare facility, and again, this depends on size, could be anything between 200,000 and $500,000. And that's before they've ever taken any child in, never mind a staff bill. So the subsidies and the schemes are going somewhat in supporting parents, but what are the providers doing to make it a viable business? And I think I found that very strong. For me, that became very strong, because if we're asking people to take over leases and to open creches, it has to work as a business, and it has to work for them to be able to pay their staff. And we're coming into the summer holidays now, and there are families, parents like me all across the country now getting ready with their thank you cards and their gifts for their teachers and for their early childhood educators. Our children will finish up school, ECI 1 and ECI 2 next week, and their teachers, as far as they're concerned, their early childhood educators, will sign on the next day because they will not be paid for the summer, and they mightn't get their subs until August or even further, and that puts a pressure on the viability of them holding. And these are wonderful women in the main. So that and then you have the owners of these creches trying to balance all that and the turnover in staff. So the recognition of the profession is really lacking. And that came out really strongly, is that we as mothers know how wonderful these people are, and they need to be recognised. The lack of facilities is directly related to that, because if you can't run a viable business, because that's what they are at the moment, they're businesses, you can't stop them, and it feeds back. And then it's part of their education, it's part of our children's education. There is the wider childcare part of it, but we're establishing our children on their education journey.
Like if you build a housing estate with 50 houses in it, there may well be 1-2 children coming into that family life. Like even one child, 50 extra children, that's a lot of childcare facilities, a lot of childcare places. Yeah. And then there may be more, so you could be talking 100 children
easily
in one small estate.
Yeah. And if you think of that, it's great to hear that there's more good news on housing coming later, Damien. And Tramore, as we all know, has grown hugely with housing, which means that there are families going in there. There are mums and dads going to work to be able to buy those houses, to live in them, and to give their children the childhood that they deserve. But it does mean that mums and dads have to go back to work after their parents' leave or their maternity leaves. And we had a couple of mums speak incredibly passionately on Thursday about what that's doing to the family dynamic. So if you only receive 6 months statutory maternity leave, you're trying to get back to work at 6 months because you're on unpaid leave after that for maybe 16 weeks. But can you afford that after having taken a severe drop from your monthly income with a newborn in the house? So how does the mortgage get paid? How does the bill get paid? How do you feed and clothe your new baby? And that we haven't even touched on what becoming a mother does to a woman. And there are, of course, there are structures there to support that. It is on the employers to consider paying maternity leave and to facilitate extended leave. But the number of mums, myself included, who have come to the end of their maternity leave, the end of their unpaid leave by choice, they wanted maybe to stay off until their baby was 1 or 18 months. But then realise I can't actually get my baby into a childcare. There's no space for me. So it doesn't matter what the subsidies are. It doesn't matter what announcements are made. I can't go back to work. I have to stay and mind my children. And it's the complete removal of choice for mothers in particular that, if everybody wanted to stay at home and mind their children, that's different. That's not the case. Want, need, and are different, and that is the glaring social impact of this deficit.
We're going to have to leave it there for the minute. Carrie, thank you very much.
Not at all.